Commander Vexthul had broken more cadets than any other instructor in the Galactic Defense Academy's 700-year history. His exoskeleton bore the ceremonial scars of a dozen campaigns, and his compound eyes had witnessed the fall of entire star systems. When he spoke, even the most arrogant Altarian nobles fell silent. When he moved, seasoned warriors from the Rigel Consortium stepped aside. So when the human cadet Marcus Chen failed to flinch during their first meeting, Vexthul felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: genuine curiosity. "Cadet Chen." Vexthul's mandibles clicked as he circled the young human. "Your species has been part of the Galactic Alliance for barely 50 rotations. Your world was still hurling primitive rockets at its own moon when my people had already conquered 3 sectors. Tell me, what makes you think you belong in my advanced tactical program?" Marcus stood at attention, his brown eyes meeting Vexthul's gaze directly. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" "Granted. I don't think I belong here, sir. I know I do." The audacity should have earned the human a week in the disciplinary chambers. Instead, Vexthul found himself genuinely intrigued. Every other species, in the Academy, the telepathic Zentari, the technologically superior Helix, the physically dominant Kriegans, all approached him with either reverence or barely concealed fear. This human showed neither. "Very well, Cadet Chen. You will be my special project this cycle. I will personally oversee your training." Vexthul's voice carried across the training hall like a death knell. Other cadets began whispering prayers in their native tongues. What followed was the most intensive training regime Vexthul had ever designed. He threw everything at the human: zero-gravity combat simulations that had hospitalized Altarian elites, strategic puzzles that had driven Zentari telepaths to mental breakdowns, endurance trials that had made even Kriegan warriors beg for mercy. Marcus Chen absorbed it all. The first month, Vexthul watched the human fail repeatedly. Marcus's physical capabilities were unremarkable compared to other species. His reaction times were slower than the cybernetically enhanced Helix cadets. His natural armor was non-existent compared to the chitinous Zargoth, but the human never quit. By the second month, something began to change. Marcus started finding creative solutions to impossible scenarios. When faced with a combat simulation designed for 4-armed Altarians, he used the environment itself as additional limbs. When confronted with a strategy puzzle that required telepathic coordination, he developed a complex system of subtle physical cues that allowed his team to communicate silently. "Sir," Captain Riltak, Vexthul's aide, approached nervously. "The other instructors are concerned. Cadet Chen's methods are unconventional." Vexthul studied the training footage. Marcus had just completed a rescue simulation by deliberately allowing himself to be captured, then using the enemy's own security protocols against them to free not only his original target, but 3 additional prisoners the scenario hadn't even mentioned. He turned a rescue mission into a prison break. Riltak continued. "The simulation wasn't designed for that outcome." "No," Vexthul clicked thoughtfully. "It wasn't." By the 3rd month, other cadets began requesting transfers to Marcus's unit. The human had developed a reputation for achieving impossible objectives, but more importantly, for bringing everyone home. His tactical briefings had evolved into something resembling organized chaos, with backup plans for backup plans, contingencies that seemed to account for variables no one else had even considered. Vexthul realized he was no longer training Marcus Chen, he was studying him. The breaking point came during the final examination, a full-scale war simulation that typically eliminated 30% of participants. Marcus was assigned the role of strategic commander for the defending force, facing off against seasoned instructors playing the attacking fleet. What happened next would be discussed in tactical academies across the galaxy for generations. Marcus didn't just defend. Using a combination of feints, sacrificial gambits, and what appeared to be pure desperation, he lured the attacking force into increasingly complex maneuvers. Each engagement seemed like a narrow escape, each victory Pyrrhic. The instructors pressed their advantage, certain they were witnessing the humans' inevitable collapse. Until they realized they were surrounded. Every retreat had been calculated. Every desperate gambit had been bait. Marcus had spent the entire simulation not just defending, but herding his opponents into a carefully constructed trap that spanned 3 star systems and involved coordinated strikes from forces they didn't even know existed. The attacking fleet found themselves facing not just Marcus's official command, but also pirate raids that were actually disguised Allied forces, civilian evacuation ships that were actually heavy cruisers in disguise, and supply convoys that turned out to be loaded with enough firepower to level a moon. The simulation ended with the attacking forces' complete surrender. In the aftermath, Vexithol stood alone in his office, mandibles clicking nervously as he reviewed the tactical breakdown. Every move Marcus had made followed established doctrine. Every strategy was textbook, but the combination, the execution, the sheer audacious scope of it all. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Marcus Chen entered, still in his cadet uniform, but somehow seeming less like a student and more like a peer. "Sir, Captain Riltuk said you wanted to see me." Vexthul turned to face the human, and for the first time in his military career felt uncertain about what to say. He had set out to break this cadet, to prove that humans were unprepared for the realities of galactic warfare. Instead, he had witnessed something that challenged everything he thought he knew about tactical thinking. "Cadet Chen," he began, then stopped. The human waited patiently, respectfully, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there at the beginning of the cycle. "Tell me," Vexthul continued, "what did you learn from my training?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "That the galaxy is full of incredible warriors and brilliant strategists, sir. But also that sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage of all." As Marcus left his office, Vexthul realized he had indeed taught the human everything he'd intended. The problem was Marcus had learned lessons Vexthul hadn't meant to teach. For the first time in his career, the Academy's harshest instructor found himself wondering not what his students might become, but what they might choose to do with what they'd learned. And for the first time in his career, that thought genuinely frightened him.